Hello, this is part 2 of our two-part video series on a crash course on endoscopic ultrasound-guided FNA or EUS-FNA of the pancreas. Let's have a quick recap. In part 1, we looked at the major reporting systems that are in use, that is the Perpendicular Society and the WHO reporting system, and we highlighted some of the main differences. We also looked at the most important initial question to ask when dealing with FNA of pancreatic lesions, and that is, are we dealing with a solid or a cystic lesion? So we then looked at some of the differential diagnoses in solid versus cystic lesions, and I also provided a brief overview on some of the main imaging findings, both on endoscopic ultrasound as well as CT or MRI of common and important solid pancreatic lesions. So again here, just a very quick overview of the solid lesions, and we looked at the approach using clinical findings and imaging, cytology, and also tumor markers. So now we are going to focus on cystic lesions. And for cystic lesions, once it is established that we are dealing with a cystic lesion, the most important question to ask is, are we looking at a mucinous or a non-mucinous cyst? For mucinous cystic lesions, the main considerations are neoplastic mucinous cysts, which are intraductal papillary mucinous neoplasm or IPMN, and mucinous cystic neoplasm, MCN. So to help us make this distinction, again, we look at clinical and imaging findings. We also, of course, look at the cytology, and I also want to include the gross appearance here of the aspirated material. And there is an additional element that is very important, and that is cyst fluid analysis. This can be in the form of biochemical tests, for example, CEA levels or amylase, or this can be molecular tests on cyst fluid. Now, if we have established that we are not dealing with a mucinous cystic lesion, then the next division is this neoplastic or not? And here are some of the commoner or the main differential diagnoses that we will encounter. For non-neoplastic cystic lesions, pseudocyst is probably the commonest entity that we will encounter, and then lymphoepithelial cyst, although sometimes this is classified as a neoplastic lesion. Then among the neoplasms, we have serous cyst adenoma and solid pseudopapillary neoplasm and cystic neuroendocrine tumor. Now, when we are looking at mucinous cystic lesions, as mentioned, the main differentials will be IPMN and MCN. We then have to ask ourselves the next important question, which is, are there high-grade features? And these high-grade features can be seen on cytomorphology as well as on molecular testing. So I want to spend a little bit of time looking at these three aspects of the clinical approach, or the triple approach. We have, on the one hand, clinical information and imaging, and then we have cytologic features, and note that I've also included gross examination of the fluid aspirate, and finally we have cyst fluid analysis. So let's look at them one by one. In terms of clinical information, the epidemiology is rather significant here. Certain lesions tend to occur in certain age groups as well as genders. So solid pseudopapillary neoplasms tend to occur in younger females, and mucinous cystic neoplasms tend to occur in middle-aged or older females. In terms of gender, as we see here, the SPN and MCN very uncommonly occur in males. Most of them occur in females. Certainly they can occur in males, but the majority of cases we will not encounter in men. Now, the background history is also important. For example, in a patient with a history of pancreatitis, pseudocyst would be definitely a consideration. In terms of imaging, here I'm going to focus mostly on the EUS findings. So if we are looking at neoplastic mucinous cysts, then a very important feature is to see whether the cystic lesion is connected to the pancreatic duct or the pancreatic ductal system. If it is connected, then it is likely to be an IPMN. If it is not connected, it could be an MCN or it could still be an IPMN where the connection is not visualized well. Also, the presence of solid areas or thickening of the cyst wall is also very important because these are associated with a higher risk of malignancy. And the appearance of the ampulla can be extremely useful. For example, in main duct IPMN, the ampulla is usually dilated and patulous, and often it oozes thick mucin. So this appearance can be seen during endoscopy, and if documented, it's very useful to suggest main duct IPMN. So a word of caution, the needle route is extremely important when looking at cystic lesions of the pancreas, especially if they are mucinous cystic lesions, because gastric contaminant, if the needle passes through the stomach, then the normal gastric mucosa can be potentially mistaken for low-grade mucinous lesions. We may see well-differentiated mucinous epithelium as well as some background mucin. So it is important to take note of the needle route, and this is often correlated with the location of the cystic lesion. Usually, lesions in the body and tail of the pancreas are more likely to be accessed through the transgastric route. For non-mucinous cysts, the serous cyst adenoma tends to have a very classical honeycomb appearance, and sometimes there is also a central scar or calcifications, and this can also be seen on CT or MRI. And the solid pseudopapillary neoplasm often has a solid cystic appearance. Now, what about the gross and cytologic features? Grossly, the presence of thick glue-like viscous mucin is highly suggestive of neoplastic mucinous cysts during the aspiration process and what comes out of the cyst. In pseudocysts, we are more likely to see turbid brown fluid, and in serous cyst adenoma, usually there is a very small volume of thin, watery serous fluid. Microscopically, again, for mucinous cysts, we would of course want to look for mucinous epithelial cells. Usually these will have quite abundant pale cytoplasm. And extremely importantly, look for low or high-grade atypia. And finally, not forgetting to look for colloid-like very thick mucin in the background. So here are some images showing the gross appearance of this very thick viscous mucin. And this is the string sign where you can actually pick up the mucin and it forms a string and holds together quite well. And on microscopy, this is the colloid-like very thick mucin that we will see. So all these features are very suggestive of neoplastic mucinous cysts. In terms of low or high-grade atypia, the classical features in high-grade cytology are cells that are actually small, not generally large or pleomorphic, but rather small, with high NC ratios and irregular nuclear membranes, and these usually form tight clusters. As for non-mucinous lesions, they do have their own characteristic cellular appearances depending on the lesion, and in these instances, immunohistochemistry can be extremely useful to clinch the diagnosis because there are specific markers that can be done for serous cystadenoma, solid pseudopapillary neoplasm, and neuroendocrine tumor. Now finally, moving on to fluid analysis. As mentioned earlier, we can look at biochemistry as well as molecular tests. And in terms of biochemistry, the CEA levels are usually high in neoplastic mucinous cysts. The CEA levels are conversely very low, less than 5 nanograms per mil in serous cyst adenoma, and this is quite a useful finding. Amylase is often high, of course, in pseudocysts, but also in IPMNs, and this is because of the connection of these cystic lesions with the pancreatic ductal system. Sometimes amylase can also be high in mucinous cystic neoplasm, which is not connected to the pancreatic duct. And a low glucose level can also help support a diagnosis of neoplastic mucinous cysts. And in terms of molecular testing, KRAS mutations are often found in IPMNs and in MCNs, GNAS mutations more often in IPMNs, and we also want to look at the high-risk profile, so P53, SMAD4, and CDKN2A abnormalities. These are often associated with high-grade features or high-risk profile in terms of risk for malignancy. I would also like to share a word of caution that lymphoepithelial cysts, although benign, can also have very high CEA levels, sometimes in the thousands, and also CA99 within the cyst fluid. So a diagnosis must always be made with several parameters tied together and not just looking at one parameter such as fluid analysis only. And here is a table looking at the non-cytological findings that are extremely helpful in corroborating our diagnosis of pancreatic cystic lesions. And this includes clinical findings such as gender and age, location in the pancreas, as well as imaging findings, the gross appearance of fluid, as I just mentioned, and of course the analysis of fluid, including biochemistry and molecular analysis. Just to briefly mention a few things again for mucinous cystic neoplasms, these tend to occur way more frequently in women, and there is no communication with the pancreatic duct in the EUS or other imaging findings. And once again, we have this very thick viscous fluid both in MCNs and IPMN. So in contrast, IPMNs are more often found in males, and they are connected to the main pancreatic duct, although sometimes this connection can be difficult to visualize. The fluid biochemistry is similar in both of these lesions, usually with a CEA that is high, and amylase that can be variable, which is usually higher in IPMNs, and low levels of glucose. Cyst fluid molecular analysis is extremely important in the context of neoplastic mucinous cysts, and I mentioned these molecular tests earlier on in the previous slide, but it is also important to know that sensitivity is quite limited, however, specificity is very high. For pseudocysts, we often get turbid brownish fluid, and again, one thing of note is that the amylase level really should be in the thousands. For serous cystadenoma, just remember the honeycomb appearance, which is quite classical on EUS, and with a very low CEA level. And for cell blocks, as I mentioned earlier, ancillary tests can be extremely useful. For example, the lesional epithelial cells are usually rich in glycogen rather than mucin. So if you do a PAS-DPAS, it will be positive in the PAS stain and then digested away in the DPAS stain. In terms of immunohistochemistry, alpha-inhibin, GLUT1 and CA9 are very useful markers to highlight the lesional epithelium. It is worth noting that CA9 can also be positive in gastric epithelium. And last but not least, solid pseudopapillary neoplasm, again a very characteristic epidemiologic profile of young women. And usually this is a rather heterogeneous appearing mass with both solid and cystic components. The CEA levels are usually low, and again, cell block is extremely useful because immunohistochemistry can be very diagnostic. Beta-catenin classically has nuclear reactivity, and it must be highlighted that the specific finding of nuclear reactivity is necessary for this diagnosis. There are many other positive markers for this tumor, including CD10, PR, progesterone receptor, cyclin D1, and LEF1. So in summary, we have looked at the differential diagnosis of solid lesions and cystic lesions. Most of them are quite different, except in the context of neuroendocrine tumors, which can be solid or cystic. And solid pseudopapillary neoplasms, when they are small, they tend to be more solid. However, when they are larger, they tend to have areas of cystic degeneration. And for cystic lesions, the most important question is, are we looking at a mucinous or a non-mucinous cyst? We have the triple approach using clinical and epidemiological findings as well as imaging, cytology, and cyst fluid analysis. And if we do determine that we are looking at a mucinous cyst, then it would be extremely important to specifically look for any high-grade features which can be noted on cytology as well as in molecular tests. And before I end, I would like to invite you to check out Pathweb. This is our free online pathology resource. We have a virtual pathology museum with more than 1,000 fully interactive virtual specimens, which are all labeled. And we have many interactive elements such as quizzes, and also now a new section on cytopathology approaches, as well as mystery cases. Registration is completely free, and the registration link is in the video description. Thank you.